Hello and welcome to the Skydival channel, and today I want to bring you guys a Frankenstein $1,000 gaming PC that uses an RTX 3080, which if you do the math in your head, an RTX 3080 is $700, which means we have $300 left to use for all the other components in the PC. Yeah, the end result was really interesting. So if you're asking, why the heck are you making a PC like this on your channel? Well, this is a for fun build because this was for a build competition with some other tech YouTubers you may know about. Those being Ozzy Talks Hardware, Zach's Tech Turf, Toasty Bros, Tech by Matt, Nerd on a Budget, Greg Salazar, Coalition Gaming, and is that it? I believe that's it. If I'm missing someone, I'm sorry, but yeah. So all of us decided to make it a challenge to see if we can create a $1,000 gaming PC that can use the brand new RTX 3080 for, of course, a budget of $1,000 and no more. And this is sort of similar to what we did 2 years ago with the RTX 2060 with our $600 build off, if you don't remember that video. But this is the same sort of concept, but this video isn't just going to be doing like gaming benchmarks. We're also going to be testing other things on these PCs, stuff that like isolates and combines the graphics card with our chosen processors and RAM to see who in the end created the best all-around $1,000 gaming PC that utilizes such a crazy graphics card. But of course, this is a competition, so we need a winner. So luckily, Brett from UFD Tech is going to be posting a recap video showcasing all of our $1,000 RTX 3080 builds, and we've already kind of devised our own scoring sheet for who's going to be the winner, and he will be unveiling the winner out of all of our builds in his video. And on that note, every single one of our builds and Brett's recap video will be linked in the description of this video when it goes live. Brett's will be coming out later this week, so that'll eventually show up, but I highly recommend you check out all of our builds because I don't even know what my friends have made, and I'm really curious to see what they come up with because the budget was really tight on this one, so it made it a little bit exciting. Especially when you consider that you're working with a graphics card that recommends at least a 750 watt power supply with $300 of budget. It was tight, it was exciting. So even if this isn't a traditional PC build guide video like what you guys are used to expecting, I at least hope you can maybe somewhat take away some of the strategies that I use to create this PC, especially when tight on a budget, and what sort of strategies I use to like get really good deals and prices, or what my process of like choosing which parts first kind of played into effect with the PC. Hopefully you can take away some of those so you make me apply it to your next budget gaming PC that you want to save a good chunk of money on. Anyways, quick disclaimer, don't build this. I don't recommend it. Pairing up a $700 graphics card with $300 worth of components is not a good idea. Anyways, with that all said and done, here were the rules of the competition. I'll get into the actual build, and then I'll show you guys the results and my final thoughts on this whole shebang. So here are the ground rules for this competition. So first of all, overclocking is allowed for the processor, RAM, graphics card. You don't have to do it, but it's an option. No pre-builts. Online parts only. You can't go like locally for like a used deal. You can't do that. Everything must be in an actual PC case. You can't get away with like a super cheap card or wooden PC case. We aren't gonna allow that. You need an actual PC case. So just simplify things. We can go with whatever storage we want, but it has to at least be big enough to store all of the programs we're gonna be loading up onto like the hard drive or SSD of our choice. So if your storage device is below the amount, you're out of luck. So that also played a little bit into like part strategy. And if we go above our $300 budget, since the RTX 3070 already takes up $700 of it, then your score will be deducted by a certain percentage, depending on how much you go over. So it's important to make sure you stay below that $300 budget, or else you could lose in the competition. I'll get to the actual benchmarking programs that we use to measure our individual scores later, but let's talk about the parts that I used and how I got them. Anyways, I just want to reiterate this again. Don't build this. Don't. It's stupid. Okay, so when I approach these build competitions, and especially like if the graphics card is already predetermined, the first thing I like to focus on is what sort of processor, motherboard, and if the budget allows, RAM I can fit in for the cheapest amount of money but will yield the greatest results. So previously in the past, I was like, okay, I might shoot for like a 6th gen i5 processor, or at least, or I guess in the worst case scenario, an AMD FX processor. So I was like aiming for that initially because I was finding some motherboard, RAM, and CPU combos using 6th gen i5 processors for about 150, 170, and I'm like, this is okay, but I want to shoot for a little bit better. So I even went as far as to lowball certain offers to a huge extent. That, I mean, some of them were honestly overpriced, so I think they deserve those lowballs. But anyways, I just wanted a good motherboard and processor deal, but I was having such a hard time finding one until I found something in the depths of OfferUp. Right there is an i5 9400F and a Gigabyte B365 DS3H Wi-Fi micro ATX motherboard combo for $120. I know, right? The actual total price of that combo is less than a brand new 9400F. I don't get it. The guy said he was planning to use those parts for a build guide, but it fell through. I don't know why he's selling it for a ridiculously cheap price. So the listing seems super sketchy, and it even took me a little bit to get my attention on the guy. Like, he wasn't replying back for a while, but I eventually got him to send me the chip and the motherboard included with the stock Intel cooler for $125 with shipping. So that was crazy because on the listing it said like $120 plus $7.50 shipping, but I got it for $125, so I guess, I don't know, a slight discount. Either way, that helps out the budget because every dollar matters. So with that CPU and motherboard in my pocket, I knew I had a good shot of doing well in this competition, but still, that doesn't make things any easier because I still have to get the RAM, case, power supply, and storage. So next up was the RAM, and luckily since that's a B365 motherboard, the RAM is capped at 2066 megahertz. You can't go above that. So I needed some decently cheap RAM, but nothing too crazy. So I got this 2400 megahertz CAS latency 15 16 gigabyte kit of G.Skill NT RAM that I was the only person who auctioned for it because no one's looking for 2400 megahertz CAS latency 15 RAM at all. So I got it for $42 with free shipping, brought the total to I think $167. Next up, and most importantly, is making sure we get a power supply that can power the RTX 3080 while under load, like for gaming. So this was really difficult because I was looking at a used power supply initially on like eBay, and I was getting no luck. Like finding EVGA BR700s for like $67, Cooler Master MWE 80 plus bronzes for like $78. So I was getting a little bit worried because that'll cut in a lot into the budget. But then I looked on Amazon and I found a $53 power supply by Aries Game, which was 650 watts and 80 plus bronze. Now, I was kind of like you guys when I first saw this listing. I didn't know about the brand Aries Game, and I'm like, are they actually trustworthy? Because untrustworthy power supplies are a bit of a problem on Amazon because you have a lot of those no-name brands that put their power supplies on the site and they usually have bad reviews. And this one didn't have that many. So I took the risk and I got it. And I will say my confidence in using this power supply skyrocketed when I unboxed the box, found it had plentiful packaging around the power supply, a manual, some codes, zip ties, other things, and even a power supply tester. So I just felt really comfortable then using that. So I think I was confident enough in using that with the 3080 and the i5 9400F. And that was only $53 with free shipping. So I think we got a really good steal on that power supply. So with that out of the way, I needed a case and a storage unit. So I went ahead and chose a really cheap refurbished 500 gigabyte Seagate Barracuda 7200 RPM hard drive with 16 megabytes of cache, which was horrendous to work with, but you gotta do what you gotta do to save money. And that thing was like $18.88, I believe, with free shipping. So yeah, I spent under $20 on the storage, and I kind of regret it because it was really slow. It did the job, but it was really slow. So with all that said, I actually had a decent amount of money left for a case, and I was thinking I wanted to overclock the RTX 3080, but that card needs a good amount of airflow. So I wanted to find a case that had a mesh front, pre-included fans, so I can shove in cold air right into that Founders Edition 3080 so I can increase the clock speeds of that card without dramatically increasing the heat. So that's why I went with this like SysKing ATX mesh front PC case with 4 included RGB fans, which you can control with the controller. By the way, I actually don't recommend it. Don't go with that case. It's kind of crap. But it was, I think, $60. So that was actually something I could have saved a little bit of money on. But I mean, I went with a 9400F. You can't overclock it. It already came with an Intel stock cooler, so decided to be a little bit liberal on the PC case budget. So with all that said, my total price came out to about $298. So that's below 300 bucks. And in addition to the RTX 3080, that totals below $1,000. So I'm within range. So those are the parts, how I got them. And now let's talk about my scores. So like you guys heard earlier, I wanted to overclock the RTX 3080 initially, but whenever I did, and I ran some tests, somehow my score actually went down in some of these benchmarking programs, and so did my average FPS. I don't know why. Maybe there's actually too much wattage going into the graphics card, so like the power supply can't keep up, so maybe the card has to downclock. That's my only explanation, because I don't think thermal should be an issue at all in that case. So I was a little bit confused by that. So I decided not to overclock the RTX 3080, which means I was at a little bit of a disadvantage. So I needed to find some other ways to increase my frame rate without overclocking the graphics card. So I did some of these tricks. First of all, I went into Windows and I changed the appearance settings to most performance. So like the actual UI looked really frail and kind of ugly, but that takes a little bit of stress off the graphics card. And then I went ahead and turned off background applications in Windows settings to reduce the load on the RAM if that was ever an issue. And then finally, I went into NVIDIA Control Panel. I went to 3D Programs. I selected all the applications we would be benchmarking for the competition, and I set their preferred power management mode to maximum performance. So it guarantees there's gonna be maximum wattage going into the 3080 for those programs. Yeah. So a little bit unorthodox. No one should have to do them, but in a competition like this, I gotta do them if I want my best shot at placing well. So with all that said, here were the gaming benchmark scores for my $1,000 RTX 3080 build, which started off with TimeSpy at 12,444, on Shadow of the Tomb Raider with ray tracing at fairly ultra settings, 80 frames per second average, and then on Rainbow Six Siege Vulkan API, I get at 1080p ultra settings, 371 frames per second average, and then on the Final Fantasy 15 benchmark, I got a score of 11,782. And then for like the productivity benchmarks, kind of measuring a little bit more than the RTX 3080 itself, on Cinebench R20 multi-core for the 9400F, I got a score of 2,362. For single core, I got a score of, you guessed it, 420. And then finally for Blender benchmark, just using the CPU, which is the 9400F, I got a combined time of 910 seconds because the Blender benchmark that we used had two different benchmarks in it, like a BMW and CAT benchmark, and we went ahead and just added the total time of each of those, and I got a total time of 910 seconds. So I don't know how well those scores are gonna total up in the end, if I'm being totally honest. I think I have a good shot at placing well, because I remember Zach's Tech Turf actually went with an i3 9100F for his build. He bought it brand new, and I got a used 9400F for a ridiculous price, so I know I'm ahead of him. But as far as everyone else, I don't know. One of them could have used a Ryzen processor, overclocked the bejesus out of it on a B450 motherboard, and outperformed me in like CPU-based applications like Cinebench and Blender. But I think I have a decent shot, because those Intel chips, as much crap as they get nowadays, still perform excellently for single-threaded applications, which is what gaming still is, even in 2020. Anyways, that was my Frankenstein $1,000 RTX 3080 build guide. Again, I want to reiterate, don't build this. This is for fun. Don't follow it. You're gonna, one, bottleneck the heck out of a 3080 if you pair it up with a 9400F. Number two, you could possibly run into power supply issues with an 80 plus bronze. 650 watt power supply. I know you'll be fine with like an 80 plus gold, but 80 plus bronze is a little bit up in the air. And finally, the case I chose was crap. Don't use it. As cool as it looks, it's crap. Anyways, I highly advise you guys check out the other builds that were created for this competition from the other tech YouTubers that were in there, and all their videos will be linked in the description below, as well as Brett from UFD Tech's upcoming recap video showcasing all of our builds and totaling up the scores and seeing who won this darn competition. So to close out the video, I want to give a thank you to Nerd on a Budget for helping coordinate the majority of this competition, along with Chris from Coalition Gaming. And I want to thank the other tech YouTubers who provided their input into this competition as well. So everyone else, just want to think that you guys helped make this process really smooth, because I was just kind of like chilling in the background saying like yes, no, and creating this build guide and just seeing how good it does. So thank you guys for putting your input on this competition. And again, thank you to Brett from BFT Tech for taking up the challenge for recapping all of our builds, but Brett's good at that stuff, so he should be fine with that. Anyways, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching, and this is the Scatterable channel, signing out.